It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Auburn Podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast, presented today by our friends at Fetch Me Home Delivery, run by an Auburn alum, and the greatest variety of restaurants to order from and get your meal delivered in Auburn and Opelika. If you're looking to have your family meal delivered in less than 40 minutes, you need to go to Fetch Me. FetchMeDelivery.com. Use promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. Also, use their free Fetch Me Delivery app. Once again, use promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. And now offering late night delivery on Friday and Saturday nights between 11 and 2, all the way up till 2 a.m. A lot of folks asked for that. They delivered. And if you're hungry and need food after 2 a.m., you probably should just go to sleep. Also, they are running their Beat Bama campaign for the third year in a row. They match 100% of all donations. Help Fetch Me beat Bama and get the word out. Once again, use promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. Thank you to Fetch Me for sponsoring today's show. Zach Blackerby and Michael Pappas here with you. Hello, sir.
Hello, Zach.
So for all those listening, happy Veterans Day. Hope you're enjoying, for a lot of you, your day off and, just kind of time and reflection, thanking those who served. I know a lot of veterans listen to today's show or listen to the podcast in general. So shout out to all of you guys. And I know the Gloat, Colonel Steve, I'm sure he is listening. So thank you to the Gloat as well as all of you who may interact. Some are not as much as Colonel Steve, but thank you for your service, no doubt about it. So we didn't talk about Auburn-Davidson a whole lot on Friday's show, specifically just because we wanted people to listen throughout the weekend, and they did. Thank you for that. But let's talk about it now. So Auburn-Davidson tipped off 5 o'clock on CBS Sports Network, so about 5 of you got to watch it, so that's exciting. Unless you have Hulu. Shout out to Hulu. No free ads. But Auburn versus Davidson in the Veterans Classic. Your typical starting lineup, and the lineup I expect to see for the remainder of the season, unless an injury happens. Javon McCormick at point, at shooting guard Samir Dowdy, at small forward Isaac Okoro, power forward at the 4 Danjel Purifoy, and at center Austin Wiley. Auburn won this game 76-66. Davidson did not want to go away in this game. They kept kind of finding ways to get within a few possessions, and then Auburn would kind of find a way to extend that lead. I think Auburn really benefited from a strong start, a very quick start, and this was Davidson's first game of the season. I think if it's not their first game of the season and they have a little bit of time to warm up and kind of get their legs up under them, I think this is a closer game.
Yeah, that's definitely true, but I actually really was impressed with this Auburn team. We talked to Greg Peterson last week, and he had a lot of really good things to say about both of the teams Auburn played last week in basketball, and Auburn put up rather good performances against both teams. I mean, a lot of the issues that Auburn is finding, have a lot to do with the fact that these guys aren't super familiar with each other yet.
Sure.
There's a different guy running the offense. It's all new guys running the offense. They don't really know who their go-to scorer is, although it looks like it's going to be Samir Dowdy.
Maybe. I mean, you say that after Georgia Southern, but after Davidson, I don't know if you say that. I mean, it just kind of depends on which game you take more.
I mean, didn't he have 15 against?
It was extremely inefficient, but he did have double-digit points. But it's just going to kind of depend on what you look at. It's going to depend on how this team evolves. I agree with you. I think it is going to be Samir, but he needs to be more efficient than he was. So I've got a lot of stuff. Just stop me whenever you want to say something. Okay. All right? So first off, I think Danjel Purifoy looks like a different player through 2 games this year. Mm-hmm. He seems to be annoying opponents when he is playing solid defense, and I think that is something that I think Auburn fans kind of wanted more of. I mean, he was kind of touted as this long, athletic scorer, and we've seen stretches of that, but we've kind of wanted more defensively from him. And I think he is he's always around the basketball when he's playing defense. He always finds a way to kind of disrupt and affect the play.
Yeah, he definitely looks different on the court, but just standing, he looks a lot different.
He looks like an NBA prospect physically.
He looks like a senior.
Yeah.
When he came in freshman year, he was this skinny scoring wing who shot a lot of threes and didn't really do much of the dirty work, but you could count on him to score points. Sits out a year, comes back last year. I hate to say it, looked a little pudgy, Looked a little like I do right now.
Sure.
Not going to lie.
You still look fantastic.
Didn't look like, a high-level collegiate athlete.
Right.
And, they said it, I believe, in the Davidson game. The announcer said he thought he was in shape, and he just wasn't.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay.
Fine.
I mean, he I think he's turned around, no doubt about it.
He and Wiley both this year just look jacked.
No, you're right. All right, so I already mentioned this. Slow start for Davidson was huge. It was their first game. They didn't get a Georgia Southern type opponent. I think Auburn could have struggled late in the game. If not, Auburn could have lost if they didn't play a Georgia Southern. If they played like they did against Georgia Southern against Davidson, I think they would have lost.
I agree, which is, that's good. Improvement from game 1 to game 2. And against Georgia Southern, did you see how many alley-oops they tried to throw and missed?
Right, I mentioned that in the podcast.
It was like,
if they hit half of those, it's a rout.
Yeah, it was like they had 17 turnovers and 7 of them were missed alley-oops.
Finding the right pros for home projects can be tough and spark a lot of questions, like, how do I find a pro who can help? Will they do a good job? Will I get a fair price? Well, that's where HomeAdvisor can help. From leaky faucets to major remodels, HomeAdvisor connects you to the right pro for the job in seconds and even helps you get a fair price. Read reviews, check project cost guides, and book appointments. Go to HomeAdvisor.com or download the free HomeAdvisor app to start your next project.
When you're finished with today's episode, the Locked On Podcast Network has an amazing national show lineup for you. Every Monday, the new Hollinger and Duncan NBA show brings you insight from former NBA executive and analytics guru John Hollinger. Rejecting the Screen brings you 2 episodes a week with fun NBA talk and a long-form interview every Thursday. Your daily 30-minute NBA show is Locked On NBA, updating you on the previous night's action and looking ahead to what's next. The Locked On Podcast Network All-Star National Lineup, Hollinger and Duncan NBA Show, Rejecting the Screen, and Locked On NBA.
Javon McCormick, his first points were only 4 minutes into the game. You definitely take that. You could tell he was determined to be more relevant offensively against Davidson than he was against Georgia Southern. In the Georgia Southern game, it took him 5 minutes into the second half to get his first points. And your starting point guard in a Bruce Pearl offense, you can't do that. So that was encouraging.
And not just him, the whole team was attacking.
Yeah.
Which is also different than a typical Bruce Pearl offense, right? I mean, last season, a lot of the fans, I know I were not happy because a lot of times in the half court set, it would look like Auburn was just standing around, passing around on the perimeter, and then someone would jack up a long 3. And this season, we're seeing a lot more attacking. They are still shooting a lot of threes, but a lot more attacking.
Devin Cambridge is a guy that I'm going to talk about a lot this year. I'm a really big fan of his already, but he was on the court 5 minutes in. He fouled on his first defensive possession, but Bruce Pearl wants him on the court. And then shortly after, he had an awesome block. And it was weird. The announcers totally ignored it when it happened. They were talking about something else, and they never really touched on it. And I thought it was one of the better defensive plays of the game.
I think he is this season's Malik Dunbar.
Yeah, I said that last week. Yeah,
moving forward, I was watching the game with someone and was watching this Auburn team and being like, Auburn needs a jumper, someone who, like Malik Dunbar could throw down a thunderous slam dunk or an alley-oop or something and really get the whole crowd into it. A guy who might not really super jump out to you, but a real fan favorite that when he's the guy who can really get the crowd into a game and will do the grittier stuff that might not show up on a stat sheet. And there he was right there. 2 possessions later, here comes Devin Cambridge.
And it took about a year for Malik Dunbar to get things going. A JUCO guy that was really a role player his first year, and then his second year, he was eventually a starter, during Auburn's postseason run last year. So I think it's going to take time in the same way for Cambridge to get things going. Cambridge, a freshman. I think by the time he's a junior and a senior, he's going to be one of Auburn's favorite players ever.
Absolutely.
I really think that. Auburn's defense is spectacular so far this year. John Rothstein, who I think is the best in the business in regards to covering Auburn or covering college basketball as a whole, but he tweeted
also a robot.
Sure. Simply an unbelievable defensive performance by Auburn here in Annapolis. Tigers held Davidson's duo of Axel Gudmusson and Kellen Grady to a combined 13 points. Pearl's team will be a nuisance to play in 19 through 20. And that's what you want to see. This Auburn team is kind of known for offense the past 2 seasons, and now they're getting it going on defense. And their defense towards the end of last year when they were on their run didn't get as much chatter as it probably should have, but I think this Pearl team is coming together defensively. And, I mean, that's kind of been Pearl's thing in the offseason. He said, if you aren't playing defense, you're not going to be on the court.
I think it's kind of funny. Last year, all the key defenders, they're all back. Right? I mean, Malik Dunbar is really the only key defender that's not back.
Bryce Brown was huge. I mean, I think Bryce Brown was Auburn's best defensive player last year.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, but
I mean, Pearl said it often last year. I mean, I think that's what allowed Bryce Brown to play so much early in his career, was the fact that he was such a good on-ball defender.
Yeah, that may be true, but just, I mean, size and length and stuff, I think that you would take Samir Dowdy as an on-ball defender. I mean, he might not be worlds better, but I think, and like,
I mean, it's more spread out, right? I mean,
yeah.
you got more guys that are good, maybe fewer guys that are great. Can we agree on that?
Sure.
Okay.
And maybe like, and the length and allows them to basically switch positions 2 through 4 on defense. And they've been talking about how Okoro can defend 1 through 5, which may or may not be true.
I had a few people DM me during the game, and I wasn't able to watch the game live. The wife played the, hey, we need to go on a date card. So I went to go see, worst movie I've ever seen. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. We went to go see it Friday night. It was, I know you're a big movie guy. It was that Christmas.
Playing with Fire?
No, it was the Christmas movie. Oh, Last Christmas.
Stop. Don't tell me that.
It was awful, dude. I want you to go see it just so we can talk about how bad it was. It was so bad.
Are you serious? Wait, why'd you think it was so bad?
We can talk about it later. I mean, did you go see it?
No, I haven't. I think I'm going to go tomorrow, actually.
Really? It was no plot, not really a message there. They tried to be clever with it, and it just wasn't. We can talk about it later. It's hard to talk about without giving it away.
Okay.
So,
Your team.
Greetings to all Locked On Seahawks podcast.
Who dat family, and welcome into this week's Locked On Saints.
Hello to all you Foxborough faithful, Locked On Patriots.
Every day.
Another Victory Monday.
It's officially Throwback Tuesday.
Crossover Wednesday episode.
Thursday Night Football.
It is Red Friday edition.
When it comes to the biggest stories.
And so the Chiefs' news story of today is, unfortunately, at this point in the season, it is continuing to be injuries.
You need to be locked on.
We've touched about it on this show and all over Twitter and all that.
And all of a sudden we have a great football team with a championship defense, a franchise quarterback, a running game that can't be stopped. This is exactly why we watch football.
Good quarterbacks are maximized in good systems. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers this season.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
In the Apple Podcast app.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify.
Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
all right, another guy worth mentioning. Oh, but anyway, yes, people were messaging me about Isaac Okoro and his ability to play defense. And when I went back to watch it Saturday morning, there are times where I agree 100% he lets guys go. And then I think he's afraid of fouling. I think because in the first game against Georgia Southern, he got he had 3 personal fouls. I know 2 were offensive, but I think he's afraid of getting into foul trouble. And I think he's going to have to figure out how to do that at the next level. And this is going to take time. But once again, I mean, Bruce Pearl's not just saying he's never had a player defensively like him. He's not making that up.
Yeah.
So just give it time. I'm not worried about it. Because there are times where he's doing off-ball stuff and he's locking his guy down, but you don't see it because you're looking at the basketball. So I think Isaac Okoro is going to be fine. I think he's going to be an awesome player. Turbo Jones had a bad stretch late in the first half. He drove and had a guy open and took the shot and he missed. Then he took a terrible 3 either the next possession or 2 possessions later. He missed. He played 3 minutes. He was 0 for 2, and he had 2 fouls. I mean, that is a terrible stat line. He's young, bad stretch. I'm curious to see how he responds moving forward, maybe even against South Alabama tomorrow.
I think he's trying too hard.
I agree.
I think it was the same case in the first game. Bruce Pearl kind of said it as much. They want to play him more, but I think he played 1 minute in the first game and was so bad that they were like, okay, you're done. And it's tough when you've got a guy like that who like you said, is really, really young, and you want to get him minutes, and he's capable. But
right.
when he's just playing that poorly, it's tough to trust him to put him in. So
yeah,
hopefully
this Auburn team needs to click, and I think they'll be able to click against South Alabama and against other teams in this non-conference stretch. But they need to get a sizable lead, 20 points, in the first half kind of thing, just to allow these guys like Turbo Jones and Devin Cambridge is getting substantial minutes, but I'd like him to get more. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see how they work that out. those guys need that. They need that experience right now.
Yeah, I'd love to see Auburn get up by a lot and then see a lineup in the second half that's, 3 or 4 freshmen and Anthony McLemore.
Okay.
Because you know that Anthony McLemore is that defensive anchor. He has been his whole career at Auburn.
But at that point, I'd almost rather Stretch be playing there.
Even if Stretch is in. Like, I don't really care about that. Just having that kind of senior leadership, that defensive anchor to be able to communicate and talk to you on defense and, kind of be your quarterback, your veteran on the floor when, yes, it doesn't really matter. But if you get beat or something on defense, you've got a guy right there who can be like, Stretch, Turbo, whatever. Like, what you got to do. Like, here it is.
Right.
Just real quick right there. You know what I'm just I don't know if that makes sense.
Two awesome nicknames, by the way. We didn't even have to try with those. Those were just given to us.
Stretch and Turbo?
Yeah.
Yeah, did you?
Yes, please. Thank you.
During, I think it was the Georgia Southern game, it might have been the game on Friday. I was texting you nicknames. It was definitely Georgia Southern because you didn't say anything to me about it the next day. I want to see if I can go find them. The announcer, I think for the Georgia Southern game, was giving these guys nicknames.
Yeah, he was given one for a Purifoy. It was like the Pure or something. They weren't good.
Oh, yeah. No, they were not. They weren't great.
Right, while you're looking at that, I'm going to keep going with my notes here. So Wiley crashed the boards well, played 20 minutes again. He had 20 minutes against Georgia Southern as well. 10 rebounds, you take that. Against Georgia Southern, Wiley and McLemore had a 20 to 21-minute split in favor of McLemore. And then Friday night against Davidson, it was 20 to 25 in favor of McLemore. So McLemore's playing more than Wiley, despite Wiley getting the start. And a lot of that is because McLemore can also play the 4. But there was just so much talk this offseason about Wiley taking that next step, and Pearl's not giving him as many minutes as the rest of the starters, which I think is interesting. McLemore had 12 points off of 4 of 5 shooting. I think he maybe, outside of Okoro, I think he had the best stat line of the night coming off the bench. So, I mean, you talk about that senior leadership. That's pretty strong. I mean, a guy that started all of last year, and now it's like, okay, as a senior, we need you to come off the bench, and he's playing more, but he's just not getting that start. So that's interesting.
It'll also be interesting to me to see if they switch those two guys, like you just said, McLemore and Wiley, to have Wiley be able to be like that bona fide number 1 scoring option on the second team. But maybe it is a mental thing. Maybe they think Wiley's just better when he starts versus when he doesn't.
I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. And I'm not even necessarily concerned with who's starting and who doesn't. I'm looking at the minutes here.
Yeah,
and as of right now, McLemore is getting more minutes than Wiley. So we'll see. We will see how that continues to develop.
I do think Wiley's played very well through 2. I mean, it's 2 games, but I think he's
It just depends on what you expected. Did you expect him to be a superstar, or did you expect him to be just a role-playing center? And I think he's being an awesome role-playing center right now.
Yeah, but he's still I mean, in both games, wasn't he top 3 in scoring?
I don't think he was against Davidson.
Okay, well, I'll look that up. But first, I have the nicknames.
He didn't, because he didn't get a double-double against Davidson.
Okay.
And he got 10
maybe
rebounds.
He wasn't against Davidson. The nicknames. Samir, don't doubt me.
I don't hate it.
Austin, I'm ready to wild out Wiley.
Hate it.
And D'Angelo, I'm pureful.
I hate that one too. But all right, the Samir, don't doubt me. I'm cool with that one. All right, Isaac Okoro is going to be a problem. 17 points, 5 of 6 shooting, and played 30 minutes. I mean, that is incredible. I'm really excited to see what he turns into. And you know, he lit it up from 3. He was very efficient.
His efficiency for a freshman is very impressive.
But he's not like, okay, you know, cool, I've made 2 in a row. Give me the ball again. Let's heat check it. He's not like that. And most basketball players are at every level. And I love that he's like, no, it's about the team here. And I mean,
Wiley had only had 5 against Davidson.
Okay.
Only starter not in double figures.
And that's okay. That's okay because McLemore in that role had the points down low, so that is okay. Samir Dowdy played most of the minutes for Auburn, 34. Not as strong of a game. 3 from 10 from the field, 0 for 5 from 3, just 11 points. And he needs to be better offensively, but I did love his defense. That's what I have down for Samir. So we've kind of touched on that already.
They did not shoot well from 3, they being the Auburn Tigers. 6 of 24, that's 25%. I wouldn't expect that going forward from a Bruce Pearl team. But I will say, we saw Auburn last season just completely unable to shoot the ball in any capacity on the road. Auburn shot 48% from the field during this game, so not ideal, but not nearly as bad as we saw them on the road last season.
But, I mean, your two guards, Samir and Javon, this is my last note. Javon McCormick was much better, still not efficient. 3 of 10, 0 for 5 from 3, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 11 points. So
that was Dowdy.
Okay, what was Javon's?
5 of 12, 0 of 4 from 3, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 10 points.
All right, so
still not good.
Yeah, that arguably worse. So that's you need better. You need to be better at your 1 and 2 spots.
Yeah, they definitely need to be more efficient there.
Wow, we spent a lot more time on the game than I thought we would, but that's okay. That is okay. All right, I've got a lot of football topics to talk about. Do you want to talk about the recruit?
Auburn's
Do you want to talk
defense-
about Chad Morris? What do you? Darius Slayton.
Last thing, really quick.
Okay.
Auburn's defense held Davidson to 32.7% from the floor. They were better from 3 than they were from the floor.
Well, we talked about this team being an inside-out team, and that's how you do it right there. All right, let's talk quickly about Chad Morris being fired from Arkansas. They lost 45-19 at home to Western Kentucky. 2 of 8 this season. 4 of 18 overall, 0-14 in SEC play. Gus Malzahn, good friends with Morris. I wouldn't be shocked if he got a call. This is Malzahn had a presser yesterday, and this was the last question.
Yeah, I hate it for Chad. He's a wonderful person, a wonderful coach. He'll bounce back. There's no doubt he'll bounce back, and just hurting for him.
Have you texted with him today? Have you texted with him?
We've talked. Yeah.
Do you think what's more likely, that that Chad Morris gets a call from Malzahn, or that Malzahn gets a call from Arkansas?
I think they've both already happened.
Really?
Yeah, I think when Gus heard about the news, he probably called Chad Morris. They're great friends. That's what all the reports are. So I'm sure Gus is the kind of person, from really what little I know about Gus, I feel like he's the kind of person who would, call his buddy to be like, hey, man, I'm really sorry that happened. I have all the faith in the world in you. You'll find your footing. It's not the end of the world. God's got a plan.
Sure.
All that. And then, if you're Arkansas, your first phone call is, I guess, Gus Malzahn's agent, right? It's got to be.
Yeah, I think there's rules on how you can communicate, but, that's not going to stop you if you really want to.
I don't think they're allowed to call Gus directly.
Yeah.
I don't think they're allowed to do that. I think they have to go through his agent or whomever, or text his wife, let's be honest.
What up, Christy?
I'm just like you said, there's ways around it.
Yeah.
I bet you. I bet one of his daughters got a call from the Arkansas athletic director.
I'm curious if we're going to go through this again like we did 2 years ago, and then Malzahn go on a run and beat Georgia and Alabama, and then he get another extension, and people love him again, and we just go through the cycle again. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I don't think he'll get an extension.
I think if he beats Georgia and Alabama, I think he does. I think you have to
extend him.
Yeah,
I could see him being like.
But dude, the whole mindset would change. Because then I think everyone thinks, okay, cool, he can stick it to Kirby Smart. He's the only SEC coach that can stick it to Nick Saban. You got a young quarterback. He's good for the next 2 to 3 years. He's got awesome quarterbacks coming in. He's got guys, JUCO offensive linemen coming in left and right to reload the offense. He's got skill players that are staying for another year. He's reloading at the linebacker position. He's reloading everywhere on the defense. Things are good. The future looks great again. I think the perception changes. That's what we saw. It happened 2 years ago.
I agree. The perception definitely changes if he can beat Georgia and Alabama, which, again, to be honest, doesn't seem like a super daunting task. It seems very
After
doable.
this past weekend, it looks doable, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. A few other things I want to touch on. Auburn falls to the 13 in the AP poll and the coaches poll. They were 12 in both. They fall to 13. And then
not surprising. Yeah. I know you just want to, not surprising. When Baylor continues to be undefeated, Minnesota beat a top 4 team in the country, like they're going to jump up.
Yeah.
Not surprising at all.
Yeah. Auburn will have its opportunity to move up over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. Darius Slayton yesterday Holy cow.
Yeah, after this happened, like for the last, whatever it is, 16 hours or whatever, at the time we're recording this, all I've been thinking about is how I'm going to have to come on today and be like, I think I owe Darius Slayton an apology.
You do. Do you want me to give you a second?
Here,
go ahead. Go ahead. I'll give you the floor.
I feel kind of bad. Like, I've been very hard on him and his, seeming inability to catch the ball. And I don't know what happened when he became a New York Giant, but I guess he figured out how to catch. It's like he's not super wide open anymore, and he's better at catching the football.
But, man, the catches he's having to make from Daniel Jones, I mean, he's killing it. So,
well, one of them was just like a slant, Pat. It was a nice Jerry Jeudy there. He just took a slant 65 yards.
I mean, I saw several people tweet yesterday. I mean, national NFL writers that I followed for years that are saying he is the most underrated rookie wide receiver in the NFL right now.
Absolutely. How could he not be? I mean, he's got a good chance at Rookie of the Year right now, the way he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, there are other guys who are getting into. I mean, A.J. Brown, the Ole Miss product, what he's doing at Tennessee is really, really special. DK Metcalf, the other Ole Miss product at Seattle. But
so I follow quite a few Ole Miss writers and whatever on Twitter and stuff. Every Sunday, they are all irate because their offense couldn't score points last year with an offensive lineman that went top 10 or whatever. Those two guys and Grayson Knox, who's a tight end for somebody, the Bills, I think, and is catching passes left and right.
Darius Slayton is the fourth wide receiver with multiple games with multiple touchdown receptions this season. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, both with Tampa Bay, interestingly enough, Kenny Golladay with the Lions, and then Darius Slayton with the Giants. Those are the four receivers that have multiple games with multiple touchdown catches.
Yeah, and people were tweeting out a picture from like NFL Reference of all the wide receivers this century that have more than one multiple touchdown game as a rookie, and it's like all the really good guys you can think of and like four or five random guys that you're like, oh man, that guy did have a really good, I remember him.
Yeah. What a 2-year stint he had.
So people were tweeting that out, and I thought it was really funny because it was like half the people all pros. The other half, you don't remember who they are.
Sure. Yeah, so with Slayton right now, then it looks like Seth Williams is about to get a chance 2 years from now. Anthony Schwartz. I mean, is Auburn
2
about
2 years from now?
Yes. Because I think he leaves after his junior year.
Okay. So 1 year.
After next season.
Okay.
So 2 seasons from now when he's in the NFL. That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
So I think
I'm sorry.
I think you're about to see Auburn go on a run with putting relevant wide receivers into the league. Because, I mean, all offseason, I've kind of been asking the question, like, if you were a good wide receiver, why are you going to Auburn? And now you're starting to see some of those guys actually get a chance. And I think that would do nothing but help Cody Burns and his sales pitch for getting these guys to Auburn. So that'll be fun to see.
Yeah, I definitely. Sorry, I thought that you meant.
It's okay. You didn't know where I was going with it. It's fine.
I thought 2 seasons meant after whatever. Yeah, you're definitely right though.
Sweet.
And Cody Burns can use all the help he can get.
All right, Auburn landed a JUCO offensive lineman, Brendan Coffey. We will talk about that on tomorrow's edition of the show, as well as looking at the redshirt situation for a lot of Auburn players. There's 16 guys that I want to talk about that can be affected in regards to getting their red shirt this season. So stay tuned to tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast. Michael, where can people find you and hear you, sir?
Follow me on Twitter at CouchPapTato. I'll be on the lunch break tomorrow, being Tuesday, from 11 to 1, ESPN 106.7.
Fantastic. You can follow me on Twitter at ZBlackerby. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Auburn. Also, the show is now on YouTube, if you're into that sort of thing. This has been another edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Locked On Podcast Network has the ultimate NBA podcast starting 5. Starting at podcast number 1 is your favorite team's daily podcast from a local expert. Starting at the podcast number 2 is Locked On NBA, your daily 30-minute look at what happened the night before and what's upcoming. At the number 3 spot is Locked On Fantasy Basketball, the number 1 fantasy basketball show in the land. And the podcast number 4 position is Rejecting the Screen with Noah Kozlov and Adam Stanko. And finally, the big men in the middle, the unequaled Hollinger and Duncan NBA show with former NBA executive and analytics godfather John Hollinger. It's Locked On Podcast Network's NBA podcast Ultimate Starting 5. Follow all 5 on your favorite podcast provider.